I'm so excited. I'm joined up here with Lucas Shaw, my colleague at Bloomberg, writes the Screen Time newsletter, covers the business of media and Hollywood, a must read if you don't already read Lucas's newsletter. And John Shahidi, president of the Shots Podcast Network and Happy Dad, one of the top hard seltzer, although you're diversifying away from only just hard seltzer, so one of the top liquor brands, can we say?
I would say hard seltzer.
Hard seltzer, okay. Brands in the U.S., architect, I would say, of the podcast election, and manager to podcasters like Theo and the Nelk Boys. So thank you so much, John, for joining us.
Of course, thank you for having me.
So John, you started out in the music business. I have heard you say, though, that podcasting is the most important form of media right now. And I wanted to know, why do you say that?
Well, it's no secret that you get a very engaged audience. When average podcast is 40, 45 minutes long, people are really dedicating their time to paying attention and listening. Most podcasts are consumed either with their AirPods or in the car, so you really have nothing but to actually listen and pay attention to whoever's speaking and understanding what they're saying.
And so for you, you're like, that's different from other media, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's with TV, you switch, you get a commercial break, you get off, radio's dead. So, it's pretty important.
Says in a radio station.
But they also distribute.
But it'll be the re-uploads of this people are going to watch.
Yeah. One of the facets of your career that I think is important to your story is that you tend to find white space and move towards it and identify a need in the market, whether it's the hard seltzer innovation, which we'll get to, of course, later, or the talent that you're working with, or an insight around politics, for example. So I'm curious right now, this is a little bit future looking, but where are you seeing the white space in this moment in the podcast industry? With the context that people always talk about how everyone has a podcast, it's so saturated. Do you think that's true, or do you think there is still quite a lot of white space to be had?
Depends. You got to look at different categories and see if there's an appetite for it. Right now, we're going heavy with the UFC audience because that's one of the fastest growing sports in the world. So we're launching a couple UFC podcasts. We just launched one a couple weeks ago. So you just have to see, if you're going to go and just look at someone's podcast and say, I'm going to go do that same thing, of course, that's going to be difficult because people are pretty committed to who they're listening to when it comes to that topic. But if you, look at the new ones, like, I was just listening to Ben and, going after, there's been no secret that the left-wing podcast space was pretty open over the last couple of years. And, he's done what, that's the first time I've listened to him and learned about him, but, shows and proves that someone could go and own that space, or in our case, like looking at we're big into sports. So we'll look at different sports, and me and my partners have looked at, all right, what sport could we enter and kind of dominate that space? And we decided UFC was one. There's not a lot of MMA podcasts out there. So
do we no longer consider Rogan an MMA podcast because he's so much broader? Obviously, he's so affiliated with the sport.
He does like 3 episodes a week, 12, around 10 to 12, 13, 14 a month. And usually it's only one of those is he'll talk MMA with certain guests, but you don't see a fighter. I'm talking about like interviewing fighters and past fighters, current fighters, new fighters, people around the fights, dedicated to just MMA and MMA only.
So can we talk a little about your management business? Maybe you can explain, just for folks in the room who maybe don't know you, how you kind of work with your partners, how you identify talent, and sort of the uniqueness of your offering.
Yeah, I've been very lucky to be friends with a lot of these different folks. Like just going back to like the MMA world, when my team said, "Hey, we should look at MMA," there's a lot of different fighters that I knew that are both active and retired, and I said, these guys are friends of mine, and they're interesting. And I think if we give them the right resources, we could help them launch a podcast. So it really just really depends. Almost everyone we work with are friends first, and we usually just reach out to friends and say, hey, we want to, we think we'll educate them. Like Jorge Masvidal is a good example of retired a couple of years ago. very interesting guy, kind of he's a legend in the UFC space. We wouldn't let him know, like, hey, listen, if you want to do a podcast, he's got a political opinion, but I would tell him, like, hey, I don't think you should go the political route. Like, just go straight, break down the fights. There's a fight almost every single week. Just stick to fight commentary, and just kind of give them advice of what we know about the space and what we've learned, and help guide them on what to cover to launch the podcast properly.
What was your start with UFC though? Like, when did you first become close with Dana and really get into the sport?
It's a long history. Me and Dana knew each other back a long time ago. I used to work with Floyd Mayweather. So we actually, when the Floyd Mayweather Conor McGregor fight was happening, I think it was 2017, I was on the Mayweather side negotiating, and Dana and I just kind of, like, through negotiations, just became friends. And then a few years later, when we started working with the Nelk Boys, his son was a fan and reached out, and Dana said, hey, I know the guy actually that works with the Nelk Boys, and we got reconnected back in 2020. And during the COVID shutdown, and all the lockdowns and everything, the UFC was the only sport that stayed open. And Nelk Boys were really the only creators that were still creating content during that time, because there was a lot of creators who just stopped making content during COVID. Got notices from different platforms. If you're caught making content outside or without a mask or whatever, you'll be demonetized. Where the Nelk Boys said, hey, we'll make content, we don't care. And Dana said, well, if you want to come to UFC fights, you're more than welcome to cover it. We don't really have a big crowd, but you guys are more than welcome to come. So that's how I got reconnected with them in 2020.
And so, as a manager with the Nelk Boys, can you talk about how you monetize that podcast? Because they don't work with another network, right? Like, it comes through Shots.
Yes. So again, during COVID, no advertisers wanted to advertise with anyone who was creating content, or Nelk was, but there was no way to make money. And that was really the inception of Happy Dad, where we said, all right, well, we can't not make money. We need to figure this out. Brands don't want to work with us right now. So why don't we create our own brands, which is really our business model now. We have great advertising partners. As you saw from the last panel, like, the CPMs on YouTube and the audio platforms are nothing compared to network TV. So you can't really be dependent on that. So we have a couple of great advertising partners that understand the sports business, but our true business model is to incubate and create our own brands, which Happy Dad is one, Full Send is one. There's other categories we're getting into.
I want to talk about the product side of things and how you develop them, but oh my gosh. But I also, that totally distracted me and threw me off my actual question. Sorry. I guess, the Nelk Boys are obviously content creators. And to your point, the business model is around the hard seltzer and this product of Happy Dad. So what is, at this point, I guess, more important? Is it prioritizing the podcast? Is it prioritizing the product? I guess in some ways, if you didn't have a super popular podcast and YouTube channel, you wouldn't necessarily be able to do as much of the product. So how do you think about where to devote the time?
It's a good question. Everything's important. The engine's always got to be running, especially if you want to incubate and create new brands. But the brand also has to be bigger than the creator, or else it's always dependent on the creator. So that's why it's called Happy Dad. It's not called Nelk Boys Seltzer or anything like that. So the brand's always, to be a successful celebrity brand, one, you have to have a great product, because I've always believed that a celebrity product, a fan of a celebrity product will try the product once. Always, whomever it is will try it once. The question is, will they come back and buy again? Will they tell their friends about it? So it is important to create a great product, but keeping the engine running is also important for marketing, because we have free marketing. We don't spend money on advertising Happy Dad. It's a
At all.
top 3 seltzer right now. We just did a partnership with Joe Rogan. That's the first time that we've actually done a real true third-party partnership, but up until then, it was really our network that was drinking the product, and product placement on all our podcasts, almost all our podcasts, not all of them.
How do you structure the deal with between you and the talent?
Ownership.
Yeah, I assume you're sharing it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they're partners in the product. Yeah.
And so, to your point about how people will probably try a product from their favorite creator once, yeah, there has definitely been some high profile kind of flops in the product world. So when
Almost
you
all.
Well, I was listening.
Like 99%.
I was listening to an interview you did, and you were talking about how Happy Dad launched at basically the same time as the Travis Scott one, and Travis Scott didn't work, and yours did.
Yeah.
But you were convinced at the time that Travis Scott was going to
Yeah.
your lunch.
I was convinced until I tried it.
Yeah. So when you are bringing on new partners, I presume they see what you did with Happy Dad, and that's like one of the things that excites them about working with you. So how do you even begin to have that conversation with a creator? Like, hey, we think there could be product opportunity here, but how do you identify what that opportunity is?
You got to look at one, does it make sense for the creator? Like who's their audience? What is the product? Then is there a white space in the industry for that product to grow outside of their fan base as well? Then you got to make a great product. Then you got to find the balance, which is very difficult, of it not being that creator's product, like not putting their name on it, not being too heavy. A good example I use is I'll bring up an example that we're working on right now, like Aiden Ross. Aiden Ross, one of the biggest streamers out there, wants to create a health and wellness brand, like creatine gummies, protein. And, first thing I told him is like, don't go out and say, this is my creatine gummies. Go buy it now. Because you want to grow outside of your fan base as well. So you got to find that balance of like your audience wanting to try it to support you. But at the same time, how do you grow outside of that? It's a very hard thing. I was with a friend of mine last night talking about another product that we're working on. And it's like, it's a hard balance, but it's something we have figured out with Happy Dad. A lot of people don't know Happy Dad is associated with Nelk. Those who are in the business know, and Nelk fans know. But there was a guy power washing my house, who a man in his like 40s. I was wearing a Happy Dad shirt, and he's like, "Do you work at Happy Dad, or are you a fan?" I was like both. And I said, "What about you?" He's like, "Oh, I love it." He knew all the flavors and everything. And I said, "Oh, are you a Nelk Boys fan?" He's like, "Who's that?" I said, "Oh, do you watch the Full Send podcast?" Like, "No, I don't watch podcasts." I was like, "How'd you hear about it?" It's like, "I went to my local Bevmo. I picked one up. I liked it. And I've been drinking it since." So, that's kind of what you got to figure out how to do to make a successful product. You have to get someone that's not a fan as well. But how did we get into Bevmo? Bevmo wanted media on our podcast. So we could say on the podcast, go to Bevmo, Walmart, Kroger, 7-Eleven. So, Bevmo gives us a good placement, or Walmart, any of the retailers give us great placements. So for someone that's not a fan to be able to actually, we always say like, we got to have right displays in stores where customers trip and fall over it. Like it has to be in their face.
Interesting. So that's something you bring to the negotiation, is you're like, we have this media company, so you should work with us generally because we love our product, but we also can offer you, I guess, free media.
Yeah.
In addition.
Yeah, like Ben was talking about earlier, like how much would Walmart pay to be on Ben's podcasts? Well, you're going to get that for free with us. Give the product a shot, and not that just give it a shot. Give us great store placement as well.
This is a little like on the spot, but are there podcasters you think right now should be in this space that aren't playing in it?
In the CPG space?
Or just products in general? Or do you see certain podcasters doing it well that you're like, oh, they've figured this out?
I think every creator should have a product. I don't think if you're going to be dependent on YouTube or, RSS feed revenue or advertising revenue, that's very short-lived. I think you should do that. It covers expenses, pays some bills, some leftover money, hopefully. But the real revenue, if you look at some of the most successful celebrities, George Clooney, tequila, Dr. Dre, Beats by Dre, 50 Cent, vitamin water. Like you got to be thinking that way.
Is there a creator business that you feel like has entered that pantheon of celebrity-based businesses
that's doing well?
That when you're making that list, right? Okay,
Yeah.
Dr. Dre, George Clooney,
Yeah.
Ryan Reynolds. Like, who's a creator who is either there or getting there?
I think Prime's doing okay. Logan Paul. He's figured out how to market it. He's doing okay. I'm trying to think. Haley Bieber. Road sold for $1 billion. I think they're people figuring it out.
Pivoting a little bit more to the content side of the business, because I know you're pretty hands-on with the content as well. Starting out with YouTube, I mean, it seems like you really get the YouTube algorithm. So how do you think about what the algorithm wants versus maybe what your audience wants? Like, how does that sort of come into play when you're thinking about programming and or launching new shows?
I'll be honest, I stopped thinking about that because it was driving me crazy. And I'm fortunate to work with creators who figured that out and let them handle that part. Yeah, that was for the first 10 years was driving me a little bit crazy because it changes so much. And these guys are a lot younger than I am. So they're consistently on there, whether it's YouTube or TikTok or, Reels on Instagram. They've always figured that out. So last few years, I kind of took a back seat of that because it was driving me a little crazy. I don't do any of that thumbnails, titles. They'll try to run it by me. What do you think about this title? I write back, no opinion. You're the expert.
Fully opt out.
Yeah, I'm opt out. Yeah.
You do book a lot of guests though, right?
I did up until a couple of years ago. I kind of took backseat on that. It's a little difficult, It's like babysitting. It's like, okay, this person's got to show up. This person, I was dealing with it this morning. Palmer Lucky's a friend of mine, and Nelk wants him on the podcast. They're like, I'm literally dealing with this on my way here. I'm like, why am I dealing with this? Nelk's like, hey, Palmer told me he wants to go on Full Send podcast. Kyle gave me a week that he's available in December. Palmer's going to be in Japan. They're like, could we look at dates in January? I'm like, take me off this thread. Your guys are in contact with this comms team. Just figure it out.
I mean, I feel like you are known in the industry though as a connector, and you have really helped your creators get in touch with people that maybe never would have been able to in the first place. And then most famously, I would say, is the podcast election and Trump. Can you kind of take us behind the scenes on what those conversations were like and how you booked him onto the Nelk Boys, for example, and some of your other podcasters?
Yeah, that came through Dana a few years ago. Dana connected me with President Trump and said, hey, him and the Nelk Boys should do something together. So I think it was 2022 the first time they had him on, and President Trump did that. He didn't even know what a podcast was. He walked in, he's like, I have no idea what's going on, what I'm doing here. Dana told me to show up. I'm showing up for you guys. But that episode was removed by YouTube, just recently reinstated. But it got so much attention and press because it was removed from YouTube that I believe it opened up President Trump's eyes on what is a podcast? I should be paying attention to this. Young audience, or this is where the young audience is. So I think the feedback when it was removed from YouTube opened up his eyes, where he just wanted to do more after that.
Given we've talked a lot about YouTube, and I know you said you're a little more removed from this part of the business now, but do you spend a lot of time thinking about other video platforms, whether it's Spotify or Netflix, and their opportunity for your clients, or is that also something you've pulled back from?
Well, Netflix is an interesting one because that's new. I don't know how that's going to work yet. I don't like to be the first. I like to sit back and watch and see if something happens. Good example, a few years ago, everyone thought Rumble was going to be the big thing. And I said, well, let's wait back and see how that pans out. So we don't really we like to sit back and see first. Even Spotify, we didn't get on the Spotify train at first, which kind of wish we did because we don't do as well on Spotify because most of our audience goes to YouTube, but we still do decent on Spotify. But Spotify is one that we pay a lot of attention to, especially with video now. And they have the commenting on there too, so you could actually do a lot of fun things. I noticed if you go most podcasts that I listen to, you see Tucker Carlson's the top comment, someone on him or someone on his team's commenting, and because it's Tucker Carlson, it's the top comment. So he's getting a lot of discoverability doing that. So there's a lot of different fun growth hacks now with their new commenting feature. Videos are interesting, component there now too. So I think, I've always been, I started YouTube in 2009. So I've always been like a YouTube first person, but I do try to pay attention to some of these other platforms. More recently, we just launched this live stream on Twitch with Justin Bieber. So now I'm learning Twitch a little bit more and understanding the live stream space a little bit more now too.
Why did YouTube take down the Nelk Boys interview with Trump?
There's something about, I think, the election fraud misinformation that he was talking about on there. So, yeah.
Is a Spotify viewer worth more than a YouTube viewer?
Is anyone from Spotify here? I love Spotify. No, I do love Spotify a lot, and their team is awesome. I've just always been a YouTube first person. You guys were talking about in the last panel, video, the smart TV integration is we see consumption on TV growing year over year, and YouTube's done an outstanding job versus anybody else. That's my thing with Twitch right now with the Bieber stream. I'm pushing it. It should go on YouTube as well because, YouTube is a great experience on all different smart TV devices: Samsung, Apple, Roku, Amazon Fire Stick. So, but I do think Spotify's new to video. I think it's been about a year now. So I think they'll figure that part out. They've always been a great tech company, so they'll figure that part out.
YouTube is pushing streaming now.
They are.
Yeah, that's the impression I get. It seems like they really want people to queue up. Like it's going live. Actually, today when I looked at Nelk's channel, I think it said like people were waiting for that episode to publish today.
Mm-hmm. But that's not live. That's premiering.
Okay, so
that was
premiere,
pre-recorded premiere live. Yeah, but then there's actually live someone like I Show Speed,
right.
who, is literally live with the camera right now.
Well, they went after a bunch of the gaming streamers a little while ago and then sort of pulled out, and Twitch managed to hold on to that market, which is, I assume, why Bieber is starting with Twitch, just because that's sort of the one thing that Twitch is for.
I think that she's just top of mind. I haven't talked to him about YouTube yet. I don't even know if he knows that it's a feature available on YouTube. Like I think, younger people just think Twitch is the place. It's a great place, but YouTube. Well, someone like him who's got 75 million or so subscribers on YouTube, it would just be an instant hit where, his Twitch launched 3 weeks ago and he's growing, but it's going to be a long ways to go to 75 million.
On the Netflix front, putting on your manager hat, well, I guess one, has Netflix approached it all? But two, if you were advising your creators, it seems like Netflix does want exclusivity, namely off of YouTube for videos. How do you approach that from a manager? Is that even on the table for you, for any of your creators?
No chance we would get off YouTube. No chance. Like, it'd have to be no chance. Yeah. No chance.
And have they approached
or
it?
I mean, honestly, Spotify. Like, I don't even think we would go off Spotify. Yeah.
Even if they were offering you?
You've got, our true business is building brands. So we need to be everywhere. If our business is really built off eyeballs on our products, like we need to be everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Also, I think an interesting part of the content world right now is this idea of clips and clips sort of becoming podcasts in themselves. How do you conceive of that? Like, is that a risk to the business, you think, or is that a good thing for the business?
No, it's added value. Clips, we look at it like, I look at clips as if I'm a movie studio and I have a trailer for my movie and I just want people to broadcast that trailer and just rip it off, put it everywhere, send it in your group chats, put it on all your social media, and just share it as much as you can and eventually convert to, the motherland, which is the main episode.
What about clippers who exist in the ecosystem and are using your creators' content, not explicitly with your permission or anything? They just see an opportunity to even launch their own channel, for example, where they're clipping content. Is that an issue at all in any way?
No, I think it's great. Yeah, I think it's great. It helps us. If it helps them, helps a new creator if they need to do that. Yeah. I mean, you have clip channels that actually put advertising watermark of competing brands to us, but just get it out there. That's fine.
Very relaxed of you.
You can't control it. What am I going to do? Like take them down? Like, spend my time, going to platforms and, filing copyright. It's just, you got to look at the positive. The positive is they're bringing awareness to the main episode. So yeah, we're just hoping for, that person to convert.
Just to wrap the podcast election part of this. So we're a year out from it. I am curious just to have you reflect, like, what do you think the effect of that moment is now on podcasting and I guess elections moving forward?
Well, it's not going to be the same as last year. I think it's going to be a lot different. But I'm not a contrary to everything we did with President Trump last year. I'm not a big political guy myself. I actually find myself as a independent. So, I don't really, everyone's welcome to come on our podcasts.
Why do you think it was then that a lot of the podcasts seem to primarily feature conservative politicians?
Our type of podcast, or just, or just.
Well, I guess I'm thinking, you look at Theo, you look at Nelk Boys. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking more of yours. If you broaden it to all podcasts, yeah, obviously there are certain podcasts that are going to skew one way or the other, but you're describing yourself as not very political. I think Theo would describe himself as not especially political. Yeah. But you still had like a bunch of conservatives go on the show and not a lot of Democrats.
Well, that's where I think last year would be different than the future, because last year we welcomed Kamala Harris even before Joe Biden had dropped out. We had welcomed Joe Biden, and they had actually passed on coming on all of our podcasts. But I think in the future, I don't think, we are talking to Gavin Newsom. I don't think Gavin Newsom is going to pass. I think he'll go on all of our podcasts. So I think that's why I think the future is a little bit different than the past.
So you're seeing the Democrats are much more wanting to engage across in their idea of the spectrum, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think Gavin Newsom's afraid to go on any podcast. I think maybe some people in the past or their gatekeepers were afraid, but I don't think Gavin Newsom's afraid to go on anything. I mean, he did Sean Ryan, he did Charlie Kirk. So I don't think Gavin Newsom's afraid.
I will say we'll open it up to questions in just a few minutes, so if anyone has any. But I do want to talk quickly just about potentially the risks of being someone out there who talks politically. I think the Charlie Kirk, murder was very shocking to the world, and honestly was kind of a moment in podcasting where this was a person who really was outspoken in the podcast space. And so I'm curious, when you're talking to your talent, I mean, is this something now that you think people have to think about, is like their safety?
100%. Yeah. We've already got calls from very high up people to say, hey, they've actually made some arrests with manifestos with our names all on there. So yeah, it's something we got to all be careful of. We don't post where we're at the time on social media. We post later. We got to, there's a lot of lunatics out there.
Do you think
both sides?
Do you think across the spectrum, do you think though this could have like a chilling effect on how podcasters feel comfortable having political voices on?
I hope they're just more conscious of their safety. Everyone, all public figures, by the way. A lunatic shot John Lennon. Every celebrity's got to be careful. Mm-hmm. Especially in the day of social media, everyone's just so quick to say like having dinner at this restaurant. I'm at this club right now, whatever. It's like, you just got to be smart. Mm-hmm, I'm even here. I didn't post. I'm here. I'll probably post in a couple hours. Not that I'm extra paranoid, but just everyone's just got to be careful. There's crazy people out there.
Yeah, OPSEC.
Is there a creator, a podcaster that you don't work with that you'd most want to work with, or you think has the most potential?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. An existing one, like an existing podcaster, or someone that should have a podcast?
Either one.
I don't know. Jordan, what do you think? My partner Jordan's here. Anyone? I don't know. I think we work with everyone like we've ever wanted to work with. If I thought someone's funny, but he's crazy, he's Tim Dillon. But he's crazy. And I think we could work with him if we wanted to. But but no, I can't think of anyone.
How'd you decide to start working with Aiden Ross?
We just became friends, saw his potential. I think we look at also Aiden's already massive. Aiden doesn't need us to get any bigger. he doesn't want to do anything else but streaming. He's not interested in launching a YouTube or a podcast, but Aiden could launch a brand. So I think we look at, could we build a brand with Aiden? I don't know if the health and wellness thing is it, but we've got different, we talk a lot about different ideas. There shouldn't be a rush, like let's find the right category where there's a, where there's an opportunity to grow and not really fight competition, but actually create our own category, which was what Happy Dad was. Happy Dad was, we entered the seltzer space when every seltzer brand was catering towards women, where men wanted, seltzers as well, but it wasn't necessarily cool to drink a White Claw. So we made a hard seltzer that was using our audience, which in a Nelk's audience, like 85% men. So we said, all right, why don't we make a seltzer that's catering towards men? So, you got to look at, like, even if it's a busy category, like maybe find a niche in that category to go after.
Are you still working on the nicotine pouches? So that's a category that I thought was interesting that you went into, because you have...
How'd you know about that? We've never talked about that. That's not public anywhere.
Yeah, it was on a podcast.
Oh, TBPN. Yeah, I did say that. Yeah. I did say that.
Hacking.
Sometimes I forget what I talk about. I don't prep for anything. I just go and talk, and I leave and don't watch, don't rewatch, I don't read anything written about us, so I forget what I say.
Okay, well, we know you're in the nicotine space. But to me, that was an interesting choice, because Zyn is obviously the clear market leader, but then you do have upstarts like Tucker Carlson, for example, launching his own nicotine pouches. So I'd be curious your thinking behind that, because that's a category that is slightly saturated or dominated already.
It's dominated, and it's not. 80% of the market share is Zyn right now. 20% is everyone fighting for the number 2 spot. No one's really gone. No one's become what Pepsi became to Coke, what, Monster and Celsius became a Red Bull. So, we look at our strongest relationships on the consumer goods side are the grocery stores and the gas stations because of Happy Dad. That's where, it's like 97% of the Happy Dad sales are at a grocery store or a gas station. It's we haven't really touched on the restaurant and bar market yet. It's more of a grab and go product. So we look at, all right, what are other products that we could sell into those existing stores that have Happy Dad? Nicotine is one. Beef jerky is another. So that's kind of like, we always say we're more in the shelf space business than the alcohol business. What other shelves could we go after?
Does anyone have any questions they want to ask? Oh, I see one over here. Yeah. And yeah, there's a microphone.
Thank you. What's going on, John?
Hey.
Good to see you. So one thing that I was thinking about when you guys were all talking is when I had John on my podcast about 3 years ago now, I think it was 2022, and we talked about the future of podcasting then, and I believe I asked you, what do you think about creators launching their own podcast networks? I think this was around the time Alex Cooper was launching Unwell Network. Curious to know how you think about that now today, where successful podcasts launching their own network, similar to how you guys have done so as an owned and operated channel and platform.
Yeah, I think if you have a big podcast and you could help others create one underneath your network and use your distribution to help others that kind of have, maybe talk on similar topics as you, going back to like us and MMA, Nelk is big in the MMA world. They're not necessarily MMA fighters, but it would make sense because of our audience being huge UFC fans. Why don't we, go and create other podcasts, and then these podcasters that come through the Nelk channels, so bring discoverability, marketing, and whatnot towards their podcast to build that. I think I think creating a network is helpful for your brand because you have other brands underneath there, and then also you're helping up and comers as well with that head start, jump start.
We had a good text question, so I'm going to read that one.
Amber alert.
This person's curious how you think about your female audience. Is this a demographic you're trying to grow, given that you've been well represented in the male podcaster space?
Yeah. We are talking to Kayla Harrison about a female MMA podcast because the female audience is growing in the MMA space. So we're looking at that angle. Again, going back to Casey's question, it's got to make sense for our existing ecosystem. I think if we came out with like a beauty podcast, like we would not be doing you any service. Like joining ours, maybe speak with the Unwell Network or one of them. But if you're female sports is huge right now, growing with female MMA, WNBA, even women's golf. So those are the ones that we'd be, happy to look at, which we are right now.
Any other questions out in the audience? In another podcast interview you did, I did my research actually. You mentioned you were kind of looking forward and you were talking about ChatGPT and this idea of the algorithms on YouTube has for so long been kind of what you had to cater to, but now you were thinking about AI and how the results that ChatGPT and other LLMs provide could be a new gatekeeper. And at the time you said you were sort of experimenting and trying to figure that out. I think that was some months ago. So I'm curious for an update on that and what you're finding there.
I wish you could ask me this question in 2 weeks because we are playing around with Sora and working with their team on figuring out like, is there a world of like a Sora podcast? So I can't get too much into it yet, but maybe in a few weeks I can. It's still in like back and forth trying to figure it out, but yeah, I don't know where.
What does that mean, a Sora podcast? Like where you have an AI host? Yeah.
So, yeah, got to see if it's something there, but but then I get in my own head sometimes. 'Cause like I said, I am an independent, so sometimes I go on my, do I want to be that person that's had first person, that part of that group of people having AI replacing jobs? Do I want to be part of that world or not? So yeah, but we're playing around with it. We'll see if there's something there. There could be something else. I don't know. Again, maybe that's something else too. We're playing around with it. If there's nothing there, maybe we take a back seat and see what others would do first and revisit in a year or two.
Our next conversation is about AI, so I'll just finish on this question to kind of tee us up. But do you see AI as a risk to your creators or additive?
I think I personally, I think it would be both. My drive to work is about 35 minutes, and I have a Tesla. And recently, I've been talking to Grok my whole ride to work, and instead of listening to a podcast, and I think that's a scary thing. So because now I'm taking time away from podcast listening. So yeah, I don't know. You could be someone like me that's taking time away now from podcast listening and just talking to Grok, or you could also use AI to, maybe enhance your questions if you're talking to somebody, or doing some deep research when you're talking to somebody. So yeah, it could go either way.
One has to know, what do you talk to Grok about?
Oh, it could be anything. It could be what are the cleanest ingredients? If I made an ice cream, what's the cleanest ice cream I can make? What are some good ingredients to make it taste great? Like an ice cream with good ingredients.
So you're doing like BD on your drive, but
it could be that, or it could just be give me a 35-minute breakdown of things about World War II that you don't think I would ever know about. Like it could be something as ice cream ingredients or World War II questions.
Awesome. We're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for coming up.